I'll make it, I'll make it, I'll make it, I'll make it.
Good afternoon. It's Sunday, June 23rd, 2024, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. You're watching Co-op for Two. You're joining me today for the 5th Game Design Diary about High and Low, the New York Noir mystery game I've been working on with lots of help from others. And today I've got a couple slides prepared. I'll do my normal thing. I could talk for about an hour. I think the session will go at least an hour. I've got stuff to talk about, but I'm happy to diverge from that and answer questions and talk about whatever the chat wants to talk about. There are only 12 people here, so we'll have a little cozy discussion. I am excited to show you some new stuff and talk about some new ideas. Let me check in with the chat, see if everyone's okay, make sure the audio and video is okay. Let's see. Let's do any bookkeeping before we get started. Jonathan Warner is here. Jonathan has a mystery, fair play mystery sort of book club, reading club, on his Discord, and we're reading a book called Night of the Jabberwocky. I can't remember the author, Thompson? I'm quite enjoying it. It's got a little bit of a supernatural vibe to it, but you can't quite tell what's going on. And we've got a couple people here in the channel that are worth mentioning. The Deduction Club. I shared on a recent stream a play-by-mail game that he's working on. Debbie Levy is here. She's helped a lot with the editing of the cases for this game so far. I'm going to show you those a little bit. Frederick Brown is the author, Jonathan says. Rob is here, who's helped quite a bit with some of our play-by-mail stuff and designing facsimile documents. Matt C., who wrote a very fancy, amazing, unique experience play-by-mail game custom for the channel that we played. And this is all appropriate that we have a bunch of play-by-mail people here, because I'm going to talk about play-by-mail support for High and Low soon. All right. What else should we talk about? I'm not sure what we're going to be playing in the next week, but Jonathan Warner was suggesting that maybe over the July 4th weekend, maybe we should play Razorhurst 2 Blood Alley. This is John Keen's follow-up to a free print and play game called Razorhurst that he wrote, that has only been played by, a couple dozen people in the world. And it's really not only a very good Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style game inspired by, but actually was sort of influential in the development of High and Low. There's some very interesting things there. And I'm anxious to play the follow-up, not just to play and enjoy the game, but to see what else John Keen has come up with. All right. Let me bring up my slides here. Where are my slides? How did I do this? Okay, so I've entitled this game design diary, New Software, New Plans. Here's a little outline of today's session. I want to talk about Board Game Geek page, a name change for the game, summary of previous design diaries. I'm going to try to go through part 1, the general stuff, pretty quickly so that we can spend most of our time on part 2. I do specifically want to get your opinion on some map art style that Logan has been working on. Then we're going to look at the Casebook Builder tool, which is just about ready for public use, talk about why it's turned out to be so useful. Then we're going to take a look at a online app that user Water has been working on, and then talk about play-by-mail support. All right, so if you don't know, there is now a Board Game Geek page for High and Low. And I keep saying High and Low. That's I've talked before about why that name resonates so much with me. It's an Akira Kurosawa film noir movie, one of my favorite movies. And I just think the name captures the whole idea. It was based on a noir New York City police detective novel as well, so it just fits perfectly. However, this is one of these things like Kill Your Darlings. It has like inside, if you know the movie and everything, maybe you would associate that title with the kind of game, but it's a little difficult, and there's already a game called High and Low on Board Game Geek. So we discussed for a while, early on, this was clear this might be an issue. And what we've sort of come up with is to have a main title that's more clear what it is, and then use High and Low as the sort of subtitle for the first main campaign or the first box. So the official name of this game, I have to start migrating to its use, is New York Noir Mysteries. And then High and Low is the subtitle for this campaign. We'll have to get Adam Hall, who did this amazing box, to give us a little variation of that in some form. This is now going to be the official page for New York Noir Mysteries. Or maybe we could just call it New York Noir. Maybe that's sufficient. If you go to Board Game Geek and you search for High and Low or New York Noir Mysteries, you will find it. You can subscribe to that page if you want to get notified when there are new posts about it. You can favorite it. And there's a forum discussion there for various things and soliciting feedback, and you can look at some images. And also there's a thread about where you can download and play The Wrong Book, the case that I've written for it, and soon we'll put up cases by Rocky and Water, two other cases. All right, so there you go. I will try to use the new name, but it's a little difficult. All right, next up. A reminder, if you're just joining me, if you're just watching this design diary, that there are 4 previous ones. The first one was sort of a whirlwind tour of the ideas with just some very early prototypes. The second design diary really showed off the more current directories and materials. I spent Design Diary 3 talking largely about the data-driven approach to the game, where I've used New York City open source GIS map data and all of the software that got written to create directories, create fictional people based on ethnicity breakdowns, and the yellow pages based on a combination of real commercial businesses at the time and fictional ones, and how that was all done to balance the neighborhoods and make each neighborhood a little bit of a small town feel, and then how the directories were generated. Really, this project is a software project, this game. I am going to talk about software today, but not about in the generation of the data, but you could watch that video for that. And then in the previous design diary, I spent most of the time talking about the use of time in these kinds of games, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detectives, and whether games have a clock and how they create tension if not, and looking at Gumshoe versus Mugbook versus Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. I think at the end of that, we sort of wrapped up with a solution that I think works pretty well for High and Low. There's a clock. It's a sort of soft clock that kicks you into overtime, that tries to create some tension, but isn't too fiddly, and most importantly, doesn't break if the player takes too long to find stuff, etc. And then today I'm going to talk about new software tools and new plans. Now, I do want to mention a couple of things here. In August, first week of August is Gen Con, the big gaming board game convention in Indianapolis. I will be there. I am bringing High and Low. If anyone wants to organize a time to get together to play. Gen Con is kind of a weird experience for me. I go to hang out with my friends. We all pack into a hotel room, 5 or 6 of us. And, but the actual trade show stuff, the packed crowds, have less and less interest for me. So if someone says, hey, we're going to be there, we want a couple hour block, we'll play high and low with a couple of friends, I'd be happy to block out that time and just sit down and be in and out of a room while you play it. So let me know on the Board Game Geek forum page. But I also did create, just for fun, to see what it's like, an official session that you can register for through Gen Con. If you're going to Gen Con, there are event tickets. There's an event database. If you search for high and low, you will see it. It's a 5-hour block. Saturday, Friday morning, something like that. So if for some reason you want to sign up for the official session, you could do that. I do want to remind you that there are actually 3 full cases you can play. There's mine, called The Wrong Book. That's the longest one. And then the other 2, Past Never Dies and Hit the Ground Running, we actually played on YouTube. You can watch those playthroughs if you want. And I need to get new versions of those up so that you can download them, play them. But on Board Game Geek, there is a forum with a download. You can download The Wrong Book and all the materials you'll need to. Just download that zip. You can start playing it right away. And then I really want to make a push today to get more volunteers involved. We could use as many volunteers as we can get on this project. And I'm going to have a list at the end about different ways that we could use volunteers. But so let me not talk about that too much. But if this project interests you, we're going to open up the box. We're going to look at it. Please do get involved. It's very motivating to have more people involved. This is not a commercial venture. And so the rewards of it are the camaraderie of the people playing it and the encouragement of the people playing it. Okay. So I did want to open up the box and just look at the materials again, because it's going to ground our discussion. So this is a little what they call a sell sheet in the board game industry that was prepared as part of entering high and low into a local board game contest. Just a little summary of the game and a little summary of differences with Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, since that's the main inspiration. All right, we got a rule book that needs a little bit of updating, but gives you an idea. And this is in the download. If you download the Wrong Book case, FAQ about various things. Again, this is still in development, but this is a fully working version to play. A little discussion of navigating in the city, taking cabs, taking the subway, buses, taxis, etc., to give you some idea. And I think what you could think of is that this is a little bit for players, but it's largely for case authors. And I've been writing separate documents on how to write cases, and I'm sort of learning it as I go. But really, you know, the real joy of this project for me would be to be able to play cases that other people write. If you're interested in writing a detective game, this is what I'd like to focus on, supporting people who want to write mystery cases that I can play, and I will play them on the channel if you write them. Okay, then there's a little research guide, various places that you might check in a given case, a little bit like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective Allies. We're still figuring out what's the best way to do that. The case log that it keeps undergoing revisions, but this is where you keep track of where you go and keep track of tags that you've been told to circle, demerits, and start and end time of days. All right. And then we just have some internal documents, which are just various writing that has gotten done for the game. That's sort of not meant for a normal player. Just to show you some of the documents that have gone into this. Okay, then we have the map atlas, and we're going to talk about this because I have some samples to show you of some art that I want to get feedback on. But just to remind you of the strategy here, what we've got is Manhattan broken up into 35 or so neighborhoods, a little bit of the background of each neighborhood, interesting points of interest, history overview, and then the map of that neighborhood and where it is in Manhattan. Manhattan is this big, tall 6 mile 6 miles. Why do I always say 6 miles? 13 miles, 6 miles wide, something like that. I grew up in Manhattan, but really I did not venture out of my little area. Anyway, so one of the huge concepts of this game is one of the puzzles is how to figure out how to make this not feel overwhelming and sterile. And my idea was that give each neighborhood a sort of exaggerated personality. Any given case is probably going to be in just a couple handfuls of neighborhoods. And so you might have a case where most of your time is spent in Chinatown or the East Village, and try to make each neighborhood a sort of a small town. So a lot of work has gone into putting businesses and stuff so that, you know, each town has a couple restaurants, a drugstore, a bar, etc., so that they're semi-self-contained, so that you could sort of get to know the people in a town, in a neighborhood, as if it were a little small town. Okay, so that's our neighborhoods where the game takes place. Then we have the yellow pages, which are the commercial businesses. We still need to recreate this in LaTeX so that we have page numbers on the index. But nice real ads from real yellow pages, plus some invented ones. Then we've got our white pages, which has got 12,000 or so people. Each one, you've got what neighborhood map and location on the map they are, and the lead number, sort of like the telephone number where you would look them up. I've talked in length about the whole apartment building system. Many of the residents of Manhattan live in apartment buildings. So you will notice that, well, I'll show it to you in the reverse directory, but we've got lots of chain stores too that are listed. Little new, this is new since the first directories. They're indented when we've got a little chain store. Here's Child's Restaurant. These are all real places. Some of these are their real places where they really were at the time. Then we've got our reverse directory, which is new to Sherlock Holmes Consulting detective type systems. And this is for each map location. By the way, behind what you see on my table here is the Sherlock Holmes Consulting detective map blown up. So for each location, for each neighborhood, we've got an entry. So here's the Gas House District. And then each block, right? Each block, numbered block in each neighborhood has an entry where all of the people and businesses that are located on that block are listed. So if you're trying to figure out, well, who lives next door to the killer, you could find that with this reverse directory. And it's got this whole apartment system. So if you find an apartment building, you've got a sort of entry for the apartment building, maybe the maintenance guy or the doorman, and then all the people that live in the different apartments in that building. So if you had a case with Sam Reitveld was murdered, you could knock on the door of his neighbors and ask them if they saw anything. Okay. And then we've got some my case, formatted in different formats. If you plan to play it, don't look too carefully at this. And I was just experimenting, printing the same case in different formats. So if we wanted to print it out in a nice little booklet like this, we could do so. Same case, just formatted different ways. And then we have the Past Never Dies case and Rocky's Hit the Ground Running case. Okay, so there's our 3 sample cases and a look back inside the box. Some of you are probably sick of looking at that, but I did want to frame it first as we move forward. All right, so let me now start with the first important thing of today's session, which is getting some opinion on map art. So, one of the thoughts is that these maps are a little plain. They're a little sterile. They don't look, I mean, they look different because the different neighborhoods have different alignments, different ways they look, and we're using a little bit of color coding to show different kinds of blocks, commercial versus residential versus park. But Adam Hall did start to experiment with putting art on the maps, showing places of interest. So he used a little design for parks that I really love, this sort of symbolic abstract thing, and then some buildings. But Logan has taken that and has run with it and has started working on more art. We see a little bit art in the of boats and stuff, sort of placeholder art. So I want to show you a couple variations on Logan's art for the neighborhood buildings, and we wanted to get your opinion on some variations. I think I could get this a little bit closer up if we're going to take a real look at. All right, so this is Adam Hall, who did the box cover, who doesn't have time to do this. Well, he worked on this prototype, but he can't. We've got 35 neighborhoods. We really do need more volunteers for art. But I do want to show you Logan's work on the art and get your opinion on which version you like, and any other thoughts. And I should say, I mean, Logan has been a great addition to the team, and he created over 100, maybe going to approach a couple hundred when it's finished, little portraits of people that can be used by case authors in their cases. And you can see Logan's commitment to making art for case authors. And that's what I want to do too. I want to help make tools for people to write cases. Okay, so but you can see what he's done here. He's actually drawn and manipulated old photos of the real buildings. So we're looking at Times Square here, and we can see, let me see if I can bring this over here. You can see these are real buildings that really existed in these locations. This is basically what they looked like. And I mean, really, one of the hallmarks of New York City is all of the architecture and how beautiful it is. That's the one thing I miss about living in the city, is just walking around and looking at these big streets and big buildings. So what we've done, what Logan and I are doing, is sort of going through the neighborhoods and identifying historically important places. So these are all real buildings that were there at the time. And then Logan is sourcing pictures and drawing and manipulating them. And the idea would be that the illustrated places on the map, the buildings that are illustrated, match to, you know, some of the points of interest, so that when you look up here, you could find them here. And they're not providing a game purpose, really. They're more just to add some visual interest to the map, but I think they'll probably end up being sort of magnets for case authors. You know, like it'll be attractive to write a case at that where someone is staying at the Plaza Hotel or the Hotel St. Moritz, etc. And then the other hope that I have for this neighborhood art is that it gets back to my issue of trying to make each neighborhood have its own unique personality. Sort of Manhattan as a city of neighborhoods, each neighborhood having its own personality and flavor and feel. So I think one of the things we're going to try to do is sort of say, what is the personality of Times Square? And then lean into that when choosing which buildings. So you can see tons of hotels here in Times Square. But we've got some various questions, and I know Logan could use some feedback, and that it would help make his work more enjoyable too, to get more feedback from people about, even if it's just encouragement. But the style, we've sort of leaned into this sort of photorealistic style, but there are open questions. How dense should the neighborhoods be in images? My thinking is different neighborhoods, like Times Square is very popular and crowded and important, so fill that with places, but other neighborhoods will be much more sparse. How big should they be? What style should they be? You can see we've gone for this style where they're all sort of looking up and at an angle. And then there's this whole question of filters that can be used. So that's basically what I have today, is some samples of different sizes and different filters. So this one is, a little bit of, you can see there's a little bit of a green glow, and they're sepia tinted. Okay. Matt C says density looks good. Debbie Levy says density looks good. All right, let me go through some of these. I also put a link in the description of this video to a Board Game Geek thread where I posted a zip file of all the different images I'm going to show you today. So if you really want to zoom in and look at them, I know Logan would love feedback. And it's, you know, feedback has two purposes for a sort of volunteer project. One is to get real guidance, which I think Logan would like, but the other one is just that, you know, that's the sort of energy that motivates this work, is hearing from people who are interested in playing it and excited about the project and are sort of cheerleading you and helping you along. So I really do want to encourage you to give Logan that support. It's a lot of work he's doing. Remember, there's 35 different neighborhoods. So if you want to help do some of the art, Logan might be able to help guide you on his process, but otherwise just encourage him. All right, so let's see, what have we got here? This one is, it looks like sepia without the glow. So just to give you some example, no glow on these, but black outline and then a little bit of a white border to set it off from the others. That's the sepia tint though. Okay, now here we have no sepia, just pure black and white. This is with larger buildings, though. You can see here's the normal building size that we've been using. Here's experimenting with larger buildings. And then these buildings are actually in much higher resolution than you see them here. So one thing that case authors will be able to do is use a full page art of each of these buildings in their entry. If you visit the Plaza Hotel, we may have, of course, there are actual photos of the Plaza Hotel we could use, but this could be actually in the directory at full size. Okay, and here's a tinier buildings. So large buildings, medium buildings, and much smaller buildings. And then we have a couple more different filters. Okay, so this is, what is this? No effects, but labels. Okay, so no borders anymore around the buildings to set them off as if they're little 3D labels. This is just pure black and white, no border effect, but with labels. Here is, I think this feels like it was the same as the first one. There is something different about it. I don't remember what. This has got the little bit of blue glow again. I also uploaded the raw TIFF. If people feel like they want to experiment with the styles or effects on the Board Game Geek thread, you can download it. And please do experiment and show us what you can come up with. Okay, here is a white border, but without the black border, I think. So no black border surrounding the buildings, just white to set it off. A little bit less of a sticker effect. Okay. Here we have a black, white, and then black. So here's a strong black outline over the entire image. I mean, over each image, rather than a thinner white and a thinner black and a white outline. This we've got a thick black outline at the edge. Is there another one? Yes. What's this one? Okay, here is Logan's pure art, no labels. I think labels are kind of important for these places, but Logan was wondering if maybe they're just adding noise. Let me remind you, I see some questions in the chat. Please do ask any questions you have in the chat. You won't interrupt me because I'm not going to interrupt what I'm saying, but I will dip into the chat occasionally and answer questions. One of my pet peeves is watching the YouTube channels where every time someone says something, they stop in mid-sentence, they answer it, and then they come back. It's very distracting. So I will get to all the questions in the chat. Please feel free to keep asking them. All right, I think, no, one more. Which one was this? Oh, this is just a white outline. No, it looks like it's black and then white. I'm not sure. No glow here, though. Oops. Okay, I think that's it. So we'll just scroll through them quickly. So this was the white outline. This is the no labels, no effects. This is the dark black outline at the edge. This is the white outline at the edge. This is the black outline, then white, then the blue glow. This one is no effects at all, around no border at all. This is small buildings, large buildings. Then we've got our sepia. So if you have some thoughts on which of these you prefer, I'd love to hear it now. I mean, I'd love to force your hand. If you had to choose one of these, which would you choose? You could just post in the chat, but the absolute best thing would be find that Board Game Geek thread about this and post your thoughts on that. There is a link to it in the description of this video. All right, let me check in with the chat here. Debbie says the labels are helpful, I think. I think so too, because you're going to be browsing this map. It might be nice to let's compare it to the Sherlock Holmes map by Space Cowboy, which is beautiful and colorful and hand drawn. There's lots of charm to it. And maybe we can try to figure out how to get a little, well, I think a big difference is the parks. And the parks that we are going to, the park, which I haven't even styled, we need someone to draw parks. But there's a park in every neighborhood or two, some with some big parks. That's all the green. But I do think I like Logan's different style. The parks will have a different artistic style, more symbolic, and much closer to the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style for parks. So I think our parks are going to look much like this and try to capture the real layout of the real park in Manhattan. So that's going to add another little bit of visual interest as well. Matt says there is a subway map, but it's hard to read. There are some additional maps. So there was a question Invisible Man was asking about, are there underground areas? So there are on the maps. You can see there are a couple symbols that you'll find. One is subway station. These are all the real subway stations that at their real locations. There are buses that go east-west. Then there are some additional maps at the edge of the directory. One is a map of all the different boroughs. Everything that happens in high and low is basically happening on this vertical strip of Manhattan. But there are other big boroughs that maybe will come out in expansions, but you can also, each of these neighborhoods in each of these other boroughs does have one entry in the directory. So if you hear of a criminal going back to his house in Brooklyn, you can go make a little stop over there to find them. We do have a real subway map that matches the subway stations in the different neighborhoods, but it's a little busy and hard to read, and I've sort of tried to blur out outside Manhattan. Ideally, we could find someone to work on a custom version of this map, or we'll just use a real one. But this is another volunteer project that I'd love to have, making special maps. I would like to have these maps custom done. We're just using maps from a market analysis book. And I would like to add, so here's another custom map that we would like, that I'm using just a found map, but we'd like to have someone do a custom map of. This is Manhattan, and this map is meant to show you these surrounding islands. So there's an island where the Statue of Liberty is, then you've got Governor's Island, then you've got Rikers Island, a little prison island, and a couple other little islands. And so it would be nice to find someone to do a standalone separate map that was much simpler, just highlighting those things. And then my idea also, though, is it would be nice to have some specialized maps of like some special buildings. If you know Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, there's an expansion called the Mansion Murders, and Queens Park has its own little maps. Mansion Murders had a couple of maps, floor plans of some big buildings that you could go inside. And I would like to have specialty maps made of certain buildings like Penn Station, Grand Central, so that you could have a case that said, bring out the Grand Central map and have a much tighter focus on that area. Okay. What's next for us? All right, so let me check back in with the chat here. Marco says, I prefer the sepia one without the glowing, or medium or big with labels. Invisible Man says it's a bit monochrome. Color would help detect areas, buildings quicker. Marco says, I'm looking to the 55 block for possible alignment problem with the metro symbol. I don't remember. Oh, on the Times Square map. Well, one of the things I could also use volunteers with is going through the maps, looking for areas that might not be easily read. And the other thing is, you know, I'm cognizant of Logan becoming overwhelmed and exhausted with the project. And one of the things that he's also had to do, he's also taken on the job of, is when he's looking for buildings to draw, he's also doing a little bit of research of all the places that I've identified, the hundreds and hundreds of places, as real points of interest at the time. And what Logan is finding is not, occasionally he'll find a business that I put that didn't actually exist in the 30s and 40s, so we have to get rid of it. and identifying which businesses, which buildings would be most interesting. So we could use more volunteer help just going through the directories, looking for places that shouldn't be there, that weren't time appropriate, picking out, checking the street addresses, finding reference photos for Logan. There's just an infinite amount of volunteer work that we could use. All right, let's move on here. If you want to volunteer, stop by the Board Game Geek page and post on the forum. Okay, so it's taken us a bit of time, but now we're going to talk about the new software developments. This is much more of the brand new stuff, I guess. Before I start into part 2, any other questions, thoughts that people want to raise, think about? SJ33 was playing the Baker Street Irregulars box, I guess. One of my favorite Sherlock Holmes consulting detective boxes. Okay. Let's see if we can talk a little bit about the new software stuff. Okay, I already talked about how Design Diary 3 is the one that talked about the code that was written to generate all the data and massage all the New York City GIS open source data and construction of maps and directories from software. So I'm not going to be talking about that here, but I am going to be talking about the Casebook Builder tool. This is what, well, this happened in 2 parts. I wrote the code, well, all the code for high and low so far has been written in Python. So I wrote code to produce these casebooks, storybooks. And it's code that uses LaTeX to give nice text layout and to generate nice table of contents with page numbers. And I don't want to show you too much because I want you to be able to play the wrong book. So I don't want to give away any spoilers. But essentially, there's a software tool that produces this PDF document and that formats it nicely for various things and formats it for page size so that we could use any page size we want, inserts photos, generates the indices, generates the various hints and everything to do all of the layout. So that tool was first written as a command line Python tool. The real problem with that is that for other authors, the actual installation of this tool with its necessary extra software, LaTeX is a big giant software package, and then there's other tools that go with it, is painful. So what I've been focusing on recently is to make an online tool that people could use to generate their formatted PDFs from a plain text file, which is easy to collaborate on with others, etc. And so that's what I'm going to give you a little tour of here and talk about. That will be available as an online website, which I'm going to show you, but also as a Docker image so that if people just want to run it locally, they could do that. And this tool will work to produce standard Sherlock Holmes consulting detective cases set in this world, as well as high and low or future stuff. And then, so I'm going to give you a little tour of it and talk about why it's useful. So let me see if I can bring this up here. What do I want to do? Yeah, okay, you could see this. Let me see, is it easier to see it this way? Okay, so I've got this running on my local PC, but it'll be online soon. So this right now is just used to build these PDFs for your storybook from a source text of your casebook. And Debbie Levy is here, who's been helping me with the editing of my case. And we're using Google Docs to actually write the text of the case. And then that just gets pasted into here. Maybe we'll eventually do an automatic import and generates the thing. So it's it makes it easier to collaborate on it because the Google Doc is just plain text. So let me just see if I can get this working here. Okay, so you would create an author account. All right, guys, go away. You could create just a player account. We'll talk about that later, but I'm going to so you could link you could link your Google account, whatever. Okay, so I'm signed in. I've got my profile and all that stuff here. Okay, but let me go to games. So here I've got 3 games. These are the 3 cases that exist so far. Water and I just ported his case over here. It's parsed, it gives you a couple stats for each case. You could create a new game set view. Well, let me just go to the wrong book. I don't want to give too much away. Maybe I'll go to Past Never Dies since we've played that one on YouTube. Okay, so what we've got here is, for the Past Never Dies, this is the produced published files for the game. So basically what you're looking at here is all different versions formatted for this case. So there's a whole set that would be suitable for playing on a tablet. That's the solo screen versions, or if you wanted to print them out. And then you've got a double column that would be the shortest number of pages. So let me just show you. If we click on this, here is the case formatted for a double column layout. The intros are single column, but then you can see this would be most efficient use of space. This is a standard Space Cowboys 2-column entry here. Okay, so you don't want to look, don't read too much to spoil this case for you. Where is it? It's popped into a new window. No. There, okay. All right. So these are just published in different formats. And then a zip file with all of them. And the idea here is, well, let me click the edit. Here's what you would do to edit a case. You've basically got the actual text of the story. Don't look at this again, spoilers. Here is the actual source of that document. It's basically marked down with some extra stuff. So this is the source that gets built into that nicely formatted PDF with tables of contents and sections here. It's just little headers, markdown. If you know markdown format, then you'll understand. Basically, it's plain text. You basically write your case in plain text. And then from that, all of the details of the case are parsed. And then you can choose your preferred format for evaluating and play testing. So this is the format that you would generate quickly every time you make a change. And then when you looked at that full set of files, it generates every combination. So there's your 2 columns per page, 1 column per page, 1 lead per page, which is better if you're playing it on a device, and then paper size. So you set your preferred format, and that's what it will generate when it's making just a single output, which I'll show you right now. So you can also upload images, which it uses, which you can refer to in your case. Okay, so then the main work is here on this page. So you can see how what the system is. Because it takes time to build the book, a good deal of the effort into this tool has gone into queuing up build processes. So basically, if you made some edits and you wanted to see, does it format right, does it look right, you would use this preferred format. That's where it says it's currently set for letter 8.5 by 11 solo for screen. It's told us that it is up to date, and here are those files. It's basically the raw LaTeX file if you wanted to look at that and find out something was happening weird or customize it. So if I click here, that would be the thing that we saw, except here is a single column, one lead per page, suitable for examining in a tablet. Okay. Can I go back? Okay, so that's the preferred format. That will happen quickly. Normally, this takes 13 seconds to build. Then another big thing that the tool can do is generate all these extra debug reports that will help you find issues, and generates extra stuff. It will generate a little mind map of the logic of your case, depending on how much extra information you add. So don't take a look at that, but you see the basic idea. If you look at the one for my case, it's gigantic. And then it also generates storybooks like this, but annotated with this lead suggests you might go to this lead, and lots of extra information that you could use to debug your case. That can get produced quickly. Then we have the full set of files. So for Water's case, Past Never Dies, it actually takes 3 minutes to build, and it builds all these in all different formats. And basically the only difference between the draft and the published is you generate this first, then you check it out. If you liked it, you'd click and you'd sort of promote that set to the official release. And okay, so if we go back to games and the wrong book, you can see if we go to the generated files here, you can see it actually takes 12 minutes to build a full set of my case in all these different formats. Now, do we really need to be generating all these formats for the final version? I don't know. It is nice to be able to generate a large font version, a 2-column version if people want to print it out. I mean, the difference in printing of a 2-column versus the format that would be suitable for playing on a tablet is like 250 pages for this case, if it's one page, one lead per page, and something like 60 pages or so if it's double column. So it makes a big difference depending on how you're going to play it. But we'll have to talk about whether we need so many different versions. And this also produces a nice little summary PDF. Have any image on this one? Okay, so that's a little tour of this builder tool to help authors produce nice looking PDF casebooks from their story, and it standardizes a lot of the stuff. And so if we jump back here, let me talk a little bit about the why it's so useful to have this kind of tool. The first thing is the tool goes and processes all your game text, your casebook text, and it can, you saw that whole section on debug reports. It can generate all kinds of extra information. It can check your leads, your labels, make sure you haven't misspelled anything, make sure you haven't used the wrong lead number, location number for something. It can add labels. Makes it much easier to collaboratively edit if you're working in something like Google Docs with plain text. It does all the sorting of entries, so you can organize your entries more logically and let it sort them alphabetically, chronologically, etc. There's a whole bunch of sort of fancy typesetting stuff that it does with these anchors at the end of each section, can do some nice quoting, insetting, formatting for different fonts depending on their usage. there's a lot of boilerplate text that gets included in all of these cases. This standardizes all of that. You don't have to know how to use LaTeX. Of course, the page numbers and links, all of the links that says, do you want to do this, go here, here, include not just lead numbers, but page numbers, makes it much easier. All the PDFs generated, if you play them on mobile, are all linked, so you just click it. If you're playing it on a tablet, makes it much easier. There's a whole bunch of things that are much easier to do with the tool. Like if you say, if you give a person like, okay, you've come to the lobby of the hotel, do you want to go up to this room or this room? When you're writing it, you can just say, if they say this, then this is the paragraph. If they say this, this is the paragraph. The tool will stick those out into randomly numbered leads so that no information is leaked and spoiled. And then eventually, hopefully, the tool will facilitate things like translating it into different languages. I've talked about the debug versions. I showed you a little sneak into the graphic plot maps. And just to show you, if we go to the wrong book and we look at the plot map for my case, generated with GraphViz, it's ridiculous. But this would be useful for seeing how can they find this information. Are there any flaws? Are there multiple ways to find it, etc.? Okay. There's a whole bunch of extra stuff I'm not showing you in the debug versions that outputs raw data of all the places that are used in a case so that you can bring them back into the GIS mapping software to show a nice map of all the places that are used in a case. And I also use it for collecting all the places that are referenced in a case so that I lock them in. So if we ever update the directories, we make sure nothing gets broken. And then the other thing, there are lots of possibilities for doing future work with this tool. It's mainly now for authors to sign up to build their cases, but people who want to play the game can also sign up, and it can serve as a little repository for all the cases. So thinking about things like letting people rate cases, leave comments on cases, browse the list of cases, sort by difficulty, etc. And then I'm going to talk about other ideas that we're working on for how to develop the tool for other stuff. Okay, before I do this, I want to check in with the chat because I see one of my very favorite YouTube channels has stopped by, the Dungeon Dive. I've recommended the Dungeon Dive many times on this channel, and really, there's lots of reasons to love. You should go check out the Dungeon Dive if you haven't. He goes through lots of dungeon crawler games, but tons of games I've never heard of that are beautiful little indie games. So there's a real close to my heart. I'm not a huge dungeon crawler player. There's a sort of a different niche, but looking at so many of these little indie projects that get discussed, and he just has a great take on what makes the game interesting and fun and different, and comparing them. He recently put up a video of a couple top dungeon crawler games comparing them, and it's really wonderful. And you could listen to him talk about these games for a long time. It's very pleasant to watch. Dungeon Dive says, really interesting, totally out of my wheelhouse, but I'm intrigued. Okay, well, there you go. All right, next, I wanted to show you a little React app coded by water online directory. So what's the best way for me to bring this up without? I think it's easiest if I go here, go to the About page. So there's a document showing you the syntax for writing cases. I'm in the process of completely redoing it. I'll talk about that later, but there is a documentation on the syntax of that tool, how it produces the LaTeX text layout and the different little mini language you can use for writing your cases. And we'll have some sample cases soon. But that's not what I wanted to show you. What I wanted to show you is the online directory. This is just a little proof of concept, but Water has made this, put the directories, the white pages and the yellow pages online. So if we click in here and we search for, let's see, Macy's, we've got, there's Macy's department store. There's the location on the map, Tenderloin District, Block 43, and there's the lead number. And then there's some people named Macy's, and then we've matched some partial words here. So in some sense, this would be a little bit of cheating. Like if we search for Smith, we're going to get a whole bunch of people named Smith in the directory. And then, so this is a little bit of cheating because you wouldn't normally be able to, if you had the physical directories, search for Smith and find blacksmith. So we're talking about, anyway, this is just a little proof of concept showing the online search of the directories, but eventually I'll tell you what the idea here is. This really is meant to be an old school play by paper tool. Most of the people who like these kinds of games, including me, don't really want to interact with the computer, would rather deal with all paper and pen. However, one of the biggest obstacles to writing cases for a game like this, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, or this game, is playtesting. It's very hard to playtest these games. Basically, anyone can only play it once. No one wants to print out 200 pages to playtest a game. So we're thinking of can we facilitate playtesting a little bit? And I think the idea here is to have a mobile app website version where we make it as easy as possible for people to playtest cases in the early stages. So the idea would be that the leads would be online too. So if someone said, I've made a new case, I need some early playtesters, you wouldn't have to print it out. Maybe you just actually click the link and play the case. Maybe you'd have all of the directories in front of you from the base set, but just be playing the case online. So you would go to a lead and it would come up on your tablet, and then make it very easy to submit feedback, like just a little quick, while you're reading any given lead, click a button, give a little feedback about that lead that would get sent to the author. And also, even more importantly, a playtest app could show what places people tried to go to. So if they read a lead and were like, oh, I know where I'll find that person, I'll find them at the drugstore. So you would type into your online while you're playtesting, you'd be like drugstore, in Liggett's drugstore, and you'd try to go there while you were playing the case, and the case would say there's no entry for that. Then the author would get a little report of the case showing that 50% of the people who played the game tried to go to this one place or tried to look up this guy's name in the directory and couldn't find it. And that would be a huge help to authors to see where people tried to go and generate nice little reports for authors showing how their playtesters interacted with the game, where they struggled, where they got lost. So that's one little tool that we'll be working on, online playtesting tool with information given to the author. What else? Okay, this is the last part of the talk, the newest newest work that we've been thinking about is play-by-mail stuff and expanding the back-end tools to support play-by-mail games. Now, on this channel, we do quite a bit of play-by-mail games, and there are a couple main ones that we've played. One is Dear Holmes. That's just a Sherlock Holmes case that unfolds over the course of 4 letters. There's no interaction. You don't do anything. You just get a first letter introducing you to the case, get a letter each week or so, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. But the other game that captures closest to what I'm thinking is Murders by Mail. Murdersbymail.com has 3 cases. One's a Sherlock Holmes case, one's a Cozy England case. And it's very much set up like a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective case. You've got map and directory. But what's different is that you submit your moves online, and then a week later you get a letter with the result of your moves. And you can watch playthroughs of all 3 of those cases on the channel. They're really dear to my heart. There's something very special about a forced delay game, a forced slow playing game that takes you months to play. And the more I work on high and low, the more attracted I am to sort of trying to facilitate my favorite experiences in this space. And for me, my favorite, the longer the better. So my favorite of the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective games are the large expansions, Queen's Park, Adventures by Gaslight, and of course, Gumshoe, which is right behind me here. That's the biggest, most ambitious one, and the one closest to what we're doing here. But I just love those big, long, involved games. And the play-by-mail is special because it really forces you to take months to play a game. And there's something very special about that. So I want to go into that space. I want to build the tools that will let authors make the standard Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style games that you play in one sitting, but also multi-part campaign games and play-by-mail games. And Murders by Mail does something quite interesting where you've got 3 people that you can send, and one of the decisions you make each turn is who to send, which of your 3 investigators to send to each location. And the results are slightly different depending on who you send. So we'll want to support that. But I have some other ideas, and Rob, who's in the channel, and I have been talking about different ideas. And Matt C, who wrote a custom play-by-mail game that we played on the channel, has some ideas. And one of those ideas is the idea of, so the decision in the Murders by Mail is who to send to each location, and then the back end where you enter your moves each week tries to solve one problem in this space. And one of the problems in this space is, what happens if the players say they want to go to this location that doesn't exist there's no entry for? You don't want to wait a week and then give them a letter that's blank and says there was nothing there. So the way the Murders by Mail people handle it is the service where you put in your moves actually stops you. If you put in a place that has no entry, it says, are you sure you want to go here? The other problem is that if you play Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective or similar games, there are some entries that are super long, a couple pages long, and then some entries that are just like a sentence or 2 that says, we knocked on the door, no one answered. And that's a problem for a play-by-mail game where you wait a week and you get, 3 sentences. Although I guess you could argue, maybe it's not so bad, but it's sort of deflating. And Murders by Mail handles that second problem by not having any entries that are short. They're all about a page long. It does force the author to write a case in a certain way. So I proposed an alternative approach especially if you didn't have multiple detectives, where the player would sort of keep a queue, priority queue, that says, here are the places I want to go. So you'd read the introduction to the case. This is all physical documents. And you'd say, okay, this is the first place we want to go. Let's go talk to this person. Then we'll go to the morgue. Then maybe we'll go to the library. Then we'll check this out. And you'd, at any time, you'd log on to your account and you'd put in your top priority or move them around, say, no, this is more important now. So you'd have a queue of places you want to go. And then when it came time to generate the reply for you, the back end would just pop things off the top of the queue until it filled up however long we decided the weekly reply should be. So if we decided each reply should be 2 pages long, it would just pop off the first, your top priority place you want to go. If that resulted in a 3-page letter, then that would be the reply you got. I went to this one place, here's what happened. But if your top places were just like 1-paragraph replies, then when you got your reply letter, it would be a nice formatted PDF printed out that was like, I went here and there wasn't much there and this is what I saw. Then I went here and this is what I saw. Then I went here. So you might have, sometimes you might get a reply with 1 place was visited. Another time you might get a reply with 5 or 6 places visited. And this is not a commercial project, so we're thinking in terms of a forced delay email reply. So everything would be done. You'd be sent an email of a PDF with the results that you would probably print out on your own printer or read on your tablet. Maybe long term we can think about possibilities for how we could support sending real letters by real mail. People would have to pay for that, obviously. But it's also interesting to think about adding different kinds of interactions to the play-by-mail system. I've not seen it done yet. Murders by Mail doesn't do it, but we have talked about ways you could do it. Ways that you could let people perform actions, like maybe you could use something like a sort of Chronicles of Crime system where you didn't just decide where to go, but you could say, ask this person about this. Maybe when you read the replies, there'd be keywords in bold. So someone would tell you about an item or a thing, you mark or that you would circle, and there would be keywords in bold. And then when you go to a place, you'd say, I want to visit this person and ask them about these 3 things. And then the back end would take care of, when it builds the reply, if you mention certain, maybe even a priority thing. So you might have these 5 things you want to ask them about. The game would pick the top couple that are most interesting to ask them about. So, but you can see the flavor here is sort of having the player think about corresponding with someone else who's doing the investigation. That's the sort of mechanical feel. So you would say, I want you to go to these places. I want you to ask about this. And then you'd get a reply. And as much as possible, that reply would be trying to do what you said to do, but sometimes that wouldn't have any effect. And there are other ideas here. Dear Holmes has this, it's just passive, right? So one of the ideas I had for a play-by-mail system is that there'd be a sort of automatic advancement of the story and maybe a leaning more on events. So one of the big focuses of this high and low New York Noir mysteries is, whereas Sherlock Holmes consulting detective cases tend to be 1 day, no time passes, all of the cases in high and low are meant to be broken into a couple days with big events happening between days and things changing, and to give it much more of an active feel and much more tension and a nice arc and surprises. And so one of the things that I think would be ripe for work on the play-by-mail stuff is that the player is saying, here are the places I want you to go next, providing actions, but the system, one of the benefits of having a back-end software running the game is events can unfold in an automated fashion. So maybe occasionally you get a letter unsolicited, not reacting with actions, but with something has happened. And maybe you could, another nice idea is that this game can be designed, when we play the murders by mail, sometimes we drag out, right? Like, we're like, all right, let's just walk around, go to all these places where we don't think anything is important is going to happen. And basically the game comes to a halt while you're doing that. But we were thinking you could have a system where the sort of, it's not on rails, but it's like a little slow train running the case. And you're giving advice to your detective. I want you to go here. I want you to follow up on this. But basically the game would, like, if you took too long to visit the scene of the crime, eventually your detective would include in his reply, look, hey, I decided to do this. So basically the system would sort of see, if you wanted to, you could play it and just not do anything. You could play a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style case, but basically say, put it on automatic. And then every week you'd get like, I decided to go here, I decided to go here. And you'd hear the story unfold in these replies you would get every week. But you'd choose not to tell the detective where to go. And it would sort of in an automated fashion, meander through the case. And sort of, you'd experience it sort of passively. But lots of possibilities once we create the basics of that. There's some interesting discussions we've been having on the Discord about using AI in various ways. But for a while, I was talking about the play-by-mail stuff as a maybe, as an if, but I'm committed to it now, especially since the back-end software for managing the user accounts and doing all this stuff is written in Django for Python, and I'm very happy with it. It's very flexible. So we are going to be doing this play-by-mail support. All right, is that the last slide I have here? No, volunteers. Okay, let me take a little break and talk in the chat though before I talk before we wrap up with a call for volunteers. Matt C says, playing Blinded Birder now, it's really great. So I did reviews of the Murders by Mail games, and that was an eye-opening thing because the case that I thought would be least interesting, which is the Blinded Birder, which is sort of the cozy case, was the most satisfying, whereas the 1800s case and the Noir case were least satisfying. And we've had discussions about why that is so, but I do recommend that. I'm not sure they're out of print, not out of print, but out of stock there. I'm not, the Murders by Mail cases are a real bargain too. I really do recommend them. Debbie Levy says, I can see the usefulness of the tools, but I feel a play-by-mail version should wait until the main campaign version is done. Structure and requirements are very different. It's true. Well, one of the reasons why I really want more volunteers is I want to get back to writing my campaign. So I've got my one case, but I really do have a planned campaign, which is much broader in scope, much more literary. And I do want to go back to writing cases, but I do feel like I want to write these tools so other people can write cases, but the tools are usable now. So I think it's time for me to alternate between writing stories, cases, and writing tools. But if we could get more people writing cases, I'll work on the tools to support you. Matt says, ambitious is going to require a lot of different versions for leads. I mean, there's a whole world of interactive fiction. There's Twine. There's a sort of resurgence of interest in interactive fiction tools. But they're made for playing games on a device. And we're in a sort of a new territory here with the play-by-mail stuff. Because I think what we're looking at is a custom little interactive fiction language designed for play-by-mail. It does have different requirements in terms of replies always have to be in the form of a sort of produced letter. You can't say you're in a passageway, do you want to go north or south, type N or S. You have to set it up in a way that things can be done asynchronously. And so but I've been experimenting with that, and we'll be writing a little interactive fiction language for playing play-by-mail games. Debbie says, I really want to get back to the campaign as well. It's the main thing that attracted me to the project. Yes, well, a couple people here have been let in on the entire campaign arc. What would be nice is to find some collaborators who could help write the cases in the campaign. And that would make the likelihood of having a 10-case campaign like Gumshoe, but more involved. That would make it more likely to actually happen rather than if I have to finish the whole thing myself. We'll have separate live streams on writing novels and storytelling ideas for high and low, for writing compelling cases. That'll be separate. I agree, Debbie. I am interested in that as well. Okay, let's try to wrap up here with a call to volunteers while I've got you here, still some of you. All right, so there's a list on Board Game Geek of places we could use help and volunteers, and so you can see this on Board Game Geek, on the New York Noir Mysteries High and Low forum, but I'm going to repeat them here. Maybe the most important is just encouragement and feedback. I know, speaking to Logan, it would help him, motivate him to do all this work with the art. If there were people offering constructive feedback, checking it out, I feel the same way. For me, the fun of these projects is people playing the game, playing the case I wrote, giving feedback, making suggestions, just in the Discord, brainstorming ideas. That's the number one thing. If that's not for you, though, but you're willing to support the project financially and this channel financially, there is a Patreon. It doesn't get much attention, but I am committed to embracing it. I love the fact that this channel is supported by people who enjoy the content here, and that I turn off all the ads, and I don't have any relationship with any publishers, and I don't do any paid stuff on this channel. I go to sleep at night and wake up happy about that. And I love that we have a little community relationship here. The people who are willing to support this channel through Patreon help pay for the games we play, and the tools and the software and the cameras. I've talked a long time about how I think the YouTube board game model is completely messed up in terms of incentive, and people trying to make full-time jobs out of it by getting paid to make videos. How corruptive and influence that is, that the very same people who are reviewing games are getting paid to make Kickstarter previews for games, and have to cultivate these relationships with publishers, and so they can't say unkind things about it. It's just all messed up, and I just love the idea of the simplicity and directness of the people who watch the channel and appreciate it can support the channel through small donations. If you don't want to, that's fine too. But if this project is something that you'd be willing to support financially, please do check out the Patreon. Okay, so there's that. I've done my pitch. The deal I have with the channel is I'm not going to feel guilty for asking for the financial support from Patreon and doing it regularly. And you don't have to feel guilty for not doing it. No guilt here. All right, the main thing that I'd love for people to do is to use these tools to make cases, experimental cases, artistic cases. There's some little bit of controversy here about setting a case in the 30s and 40s. There's some real cultural racism, you could imagine, misogyny, homophobia. I've talked about the ethical approach we're trying to take for this, but you could see how that people might be uncomfortable with some of this. And I think the best solution to that is to have people writing alternate cases from different perspectives. There's actually a little Google Doc I've written about some ideas for different settings. I'd love to see people writing. You could write a medical mystery case, a detective, a lawyer detective. It would be nice to see a black detective navigating New York in the 40s. All sorts of different things. I'd love to see some supernatural cases. So there's a little document of some suggested settings, but I'd love to see people try some unusual things here. But there's lots of other small little projects that would be nice to have volunteers going through the directories, looking for typos or mistakes or duplicates. Artists to make additional maps. We've talked about the Photoshop. There's hundreds of ads that we've scanned from Yellow Pages. They need a little bit of tweaking. We need to remove the telephone numbers from them. It would be nice to add some more art from real advertisements of the time, sort of generic stuff. The neighborhood guide, which Michelle Hin did much of the writing, can always use work and improvement and punching up. The maps are sort of manually aged back from current map data to the 30s and 40s, and there are surely still some anomalies left, some street names that need changing, stuff like that. I've done a lot of work trying to add a whole bunch of places that are useful for gameplay, but I'm sure people will think of more. There's there's a dozen or so police offices, Office of Forensics, different stuff, but there are other things that I'm sure people could come up with would be nice to have a place for in the directory. It's a little scary with a game like this because once the directory, once we get to a sort of a final release, it's very hard to change it and update it. So there sort of has to be a big effort to making sure the directory is as complete as we can get it when eventually sort of locks down. And then there's a whole area that I want to do more work on when I can catch my breath, of adding some more mechanics. Gumshoe behind me had a whole complicated fingerprint mugshot system, and I've had some ideas for criminal histories and fingerprints and forensics. I talked about this idea of a overlay grid that you could put a photo inside and say, okay, I want to examine this cell. So you could take a look at a map and have a grid of 100 locations and say, do fingerprint analysis here, check for fingerprints here, check this. I talked about it in one of my live streams, but I want to get back to that. And if you have game design detective ideas about that, I'd love to have you jump in the Discord and talk about that at some point. We'll have to have some more game design diaries talking about some of these ideas. I feel like they haven't quite been done as well as they could be done, but there are puzzles to solve there. If you're a programmer, I could absolutely use some help writing code here for the online tools. Water was writing that online directory search, but really we do have an ambitious vision for a playtesting tool, and that's sort of like a separate project. My back end can process the text and output sort of JSON documents of the cases, but the standalone tool, making a playtesting tool that looks nice, feels nice, and is sort of complete, maybe that could bring up maps and show maps. I don't think Water wants to be doing that whole thing. He's more doing the proof of concept. So if that appeals to you, I'd love to have someone to jump on that project. And then there's some other data-driven stuff that could be done as sort of command line tools. If we can figure out how to generate, there's some tool software out there for programmatically generating fingerprints, but also I was thinking it would be nice to have a document, like a criminal history document that the players might need to go through. And so if you're interested in generating that kind of stuff, programmatically generating additional documents like criminal histories, those are sort of fun projects that I could use someone. These are sort of separate standalone projects someone could work on, or maybe you can think of some other ideas that I haven't. there is another little element where the directories, so the casebooks are being generated, the tool can generate HTML or LaTeX, which can get formatted nicely for PDF with page numbers. The directories are using a different system now. Before I bit the bullet and moved over to LaTeX, the code that generates all the directory is generating HTML, which is getting translated into PDF, which works fine, sort of, except it breaks with page numbers. So we really need to rewrite that code to generate LaTeX directly from the directories. But it's a little tricky because it's double columned and we want some other stuff. So if you're got some experience with LaTeX and would be interested in sort of doing proof of concept, creating 2-column directory layouts that look nice with headers of page, what's on each page, I would love someone to take on that project because LaTeX does hurt my head. And for all of this, if you want to volunteer, there's a Discord, which I'm in 24 hours a day almost, it seems. There's a link to that on this YouTube channel. But the Board Game Geek page for this game has a forum thread about volunteers, and that would be the best place to go and post and say, I'm interested. And then you can come by and chat, and we can find a way. No one's going to be turned down. Okay, I think that's it for today. Other than talking, let me check in with the chat, and we'll talk if anyone wants to discuss anything else about the game, any ideas. I'm happy to talk. Logan says, thanks for all your input on the art. Everyone, feel free to add more to the comments on the Discord or Board Game Geek. It's helpful, and thanks for everyone's hard work in getting the game to where it is. Matt C says, the cases that have been written so far were written with previous versions of the directories. Have they been updated, or are they paired with the version they're written under? Well, okay, that's a great question. So the directory has undergone one major revision, and the first 2 cases were written with the first set of directories data, and then my case was written with the second set. But a large amount of work that has gone into my software that generates the directory is code to make sure that when I'm regenerating the directory, like I decide, the directory is doing a lot of stuff, like deciding how many drugstores should there be, what neighborhood has extra, but then each neighborhood should have at least one, and then naming them and whatever. And then we've got a big database of real places. But it is a concern that if we modify the directories, it breaks old cases. But one of the things that the software tool does when it processes a case is it exports a list of all the places that were actually used in a case that aren't real places. And then I lock those in. I can take that set and lock them in so that any future directory is guaranteed to have all the places in the previous directories that any case actually used. So one of the things that happened when Water and I moved his case over to use the tool is I took all of the locations he used and locked them in to the new directory. So when the third version of the directory comes out, or 2.5, whatever, you'll be able to play all the cases previously with that new directory. So Rocky's case is already playable with the first early version of the directories and with the new version of the directories. And Water's case is now playable with the new versions of the directories. So that's my commitment to making sure that any case written, at least if it's written with the tool can automate generating a list of all places and make sure that even if we are tweaking the directory to make sure any place you used in your case will be still playable with new versions. And the tool also can check that. When you build with the tool loads in the new directory. When you write your case, you say this uses version 2 of the database of the directories, and it used to use version 1, and it'll report, hey, you've got a problem. You referenced a lead that has changed in the directory version. So it'll flag that stuff for you. again, that really is something I am focused on, making the tool help the author to avoid mistakes. And one of the things it's doing is making sure that if any changes get made to the directory, that it doesn't break any of the cases. Jonathan says, do you have an ETA for the revised case syntax? That's a good question. So I wrote up documentation for the current version, which is fully usable. But, you know, this is an issue with programming that I think all programmers struggle with. I certainly do. You're sort of you're always feeling like, well, it should be planned out more. I'm still not sure exactly what I'm going to need to do. So let me spend more time planning it and thinking about before I start coding. Because you code something, then you realize, oh, my needs have changed. You've written code infrastructure that doesn't quite fit it. At some point, you just have to bite the bullet and say, look, I can't predict everything I'm going to need. I'm just going to have to write the first version, and we'll figure out some stuff as we go and treat it like a first draft. And sometimes that's the only way to figure out what you need, is to start writing the code. So we've got a fully workable tool that builds these PDFs, but things became clear as they were written, things that the code is ugly and messy and kludgy. And then other became clearer what kind of things were needed. So now that the first version is written and works, it's much more clear to me what a nice, cleaner syntax would look like. And especially with the need now to support some of these play-by-mail interactive features. So probably not for many months will we get a new version. It'll sort of depend on whether I get inspired to work on looking at these proper parsing tools. I have looked at them a little bit. So in the old days, it was Lex and Yak, and now there are some newer tools for it. So if I get inspired to work on it, maybe a couple months. If I don't, if I get dragged in with other stuff, maybe 6 months. But the difference in syntax will be fairly small. And most of what you're writing in cases is just text. So I don't think there's any reason to hold off writing a case using the current version. Migrating to the new version will be fairly painless, and maybe I can even automate it so you don't have to do anything. Yeah, just use the current version. Any other thoughts from the chat? Anything you want to talk about? We don't have to talk about high and low. Anyone here have any projects they're working on? Any other game design people? YouTube says 21 viewers, 11 likes. I know what Matt says, he's getting married in 2 weeks. Well, that's big news. That's exciting. Is she a gamer? That is pretty exciting. Are you having one of those big weddings, or are you just going to the courthouse? Matt C says, yep, we do mysteries together. Oh, that's wonderful. That's very exciting. Courthouse, that's the way to go, I say. I do think there's some logic to creating memories for the wedding, so photographs and stuff, but I'm much more pragmatic. Like, do you have the $20,000 wedding, or do you put that $20,000 in the bank and go to the courthouse? To me, the courthouse is the way to go. Marlene Schlichter, who's posted on the Facebook group for Co-op for Two, is here, says writing a game sounds fun. I mean, the worst that can happen, you try to write a case and it's a little clunky and you get some feedback, there's no harm. Invisible Man says, I love those New York City medical mystery game that we played. Yeah, the medical mystery game, which you see behind me right there, was very good. There's a new box coming out this year called Flatline Miami or Miami Flatline. We will be playing that in the channel. I'd love to see someone make medical mystery adventure here in this world. It would be interesting. I've said it before. I am really appreciative of the channel, of the people who play these games with me, who join me for these discussions. You know, I watch other channels that, like Rob Oren, complaining about the channel. It's not burning out. Everyone burns out. It happens. But this channel is just like getting together with friends and playing games. And it's a joy to be able to focus on that and not worry about other things. Someone needs to make there's a bunch of videos that YouTube channels make about how to make a board game YouTube channel. I recorded a whole bunch of technical videos on how to set up cameras and audio and all that, if you're interested in making a YouTube channel. But a lot of these channels, a lot of these videos are like, here's how you get views and when you probably want to go full time, but it's hard, and here's how you would do it. And people tell you about you make shorts and that gets viewers in the algorithm. Someone needs to make a video that says, stop. Maybe you just want to make a channel so you can play games with friends and create a little group of like-minded people to hang out with. Don't worry about the rest. That's my recommendation. I know that there's another couple that watches this channel and participates, Autumn and Cody. They're going to create a new YouTube channel and play through some games as well. I hope they find it as enjoyable as I have. Invisible Man says, we appreciate the effort. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being able to spend the time here with you guys. Anything else to talk about? Anyone else getting married? What about coffee? What is everyone drinking here? I've got my tea. I've got my Christmas tea. Twining's Christmas tea. In my Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective mug. And I've got my Papua New Guinea coffee. Americano, really. Well, no, it's not an Americano. It's got half and half in it. It's got the coffee drink I've invented called a Brevicano, which is Americano with half and half. Coffee beans from the roaster that's local to the area in general called Mad Goat Coffee. Highly recommended. The Papua New Guinea is very good. The Mexican Chiapas is very good. The decaf Mexican is very good. We actually did, my wife and I did some taste testing. 2 coffees at a time, sort of like a bracket thing. And shockingly, the one that we thought we liked the best, which is this Kenya Double A by another local coffee roaster here, Page Coffee Roasting, which I really do like, lost out to the Mexican Chiapas from Mad Goat. But actually, Mad Goat has a decaf Mexican, which was almost I think might have been the winner of our taste test. So somehow, shockingly, these decaf roasted beans from Mexico are some of the best beans we have. You can order coffee beans from Mad Goat online. They're fairly cheap to ship anywhere. So if you're in the US and you want to try this coffee, you can find Mad Goat. That's not a sponsored recommendation. Okay. Nothing else? Is that all you got? Is that it? 1 hour and 43 minutes. No other projects? Are there games people want to play? Someone was asking next week. Okay, next Sunday, we'll be back to our play-by-mail games. We'll be playing a new case from Dear Holmes. We played Body of Evidence last week, another medical-themed game. It was a weird experience. There were some, it was a solid cold case game with a very gimmicky, weird, disconnected papercraft autopsy thing that pretty much failed across the board. John says, to be clear, there are no big changes to the directory rules or case tool that writers should wait for before writing a case. Thank you for clarifying that. No, that's exactly right. There are no, this directory is basically as it's going to be in the final version. The rules are in there. There's no reason to wait. The case tool, the tool that builds the formatted case books, is everything is ready to write cases. There is no reason to delay. Write cases, any changes that come will be gentle and will help update everything if there are changes. But yes, you're still got a rough road ahead. You're dealing with the work in development in progress, but it's absolutely ready to start writing cases. And you've got people willing to play test them and give you feedback and help edit. So you got a support system. It's sort of like a two-track. You got a support system for you, and also you can be the support system for us. So we'll support each other. All right, so body of evidence. We played, there's some discussion about what to play next. I did mention that Jonathan Warner suggested we might play Razorhurst Blood Alley over a July 4th weekend. It'll take us several days to play it. Could even take us a full week. That's not a bad idea. I'm sort of getting an itch to try that weird Hunt a Killer. Every once in a while, I go back and try Hunt a Killer. Typically, I'm not that happy with it. But there's a Hunt a Killer game that's sort of a, it's called Death on the Vine, and it feels like it's alone in what it is. Like there's some small standalone boxes by Hunt a Killer that they seem to be shifting towards. There's the big multi-part seasons, and then there's this one weird one called Death on the Vine that is sort of like a deluxe standalone. I am curious to try it though. And I wouldn't mind playing another campaign of Seven Citadel. I don't know if Jonathan has it in him though. And then there are a bunch of other games that we're going to have to make our way through as we go. Nothing else. I need like a little, I need a clock, like a 1 minute clock. Stream's about to end in 1 minute if no one comes up with any other topics. Jonathan Warner says, good work on the tools. Invisible Man says, did you ever play Sleeping Gods in the end? Sleeping Gods, Ryan Laukett's big, very well-regarded game, which you see behind me right there, and that thing there, that had a couple follow-ups now. I played one game of with Greg, and then we hit some bumps in the road, and Greg went off and played it with his wife, the whole thing. So probably I'll never be playing Sleeping Gods. Sleeping Gods was kickstarted before the channel existed, and it was one of the things I was most looking forward to playing, but it just didn't happen. But then the other thing is that I've watched some reviews of the follow-ups to Sleeping Gods. What are they called? What is the follow-up of Sleeping Gods called? It's Primeval something. Someone can remind me. Where Ryan Lockett made some real changes to the mechanics. And I've heard very good things about those changes. So I think there's a reasonable chance that I might dip back into the system at some point. But probably not Sleeping Gods itself. Rob says, lots of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective fan cases waiting to be played. Absolutely true. There are a couple of serious ones that I want to play. A 3-part winter, what am I thinking of? Not winter one. We played the winter one recently. Yes, we need to get on a schedule playing those, I think. WikiBug says, just got a copy of The Night Hunter for my birthday based on your recommendation. I'm new to these styles of games. I'm really excited to play it, and I can watch your playthrough. I definitely recommend the Night Hunter. Absolutely recommend the Night Hunter. Marnova said Primeval Peril and Distant Skies and Tides of Ruin. Yeah, I think that's right. So he's released a couple of them. They're less epic in scope now, I understand, which I don't love the idea of, but I do like the mechanical fixes. I'd also like to study it a little bit more just for mechanics. Marnova says, I really enjoyed Sleeping Gods, but I've only played the base game, and who you play it with makes or breaks it. Well, that's how I feel about all cooperative games. You really have to find the right person to play it with. And most cooperative games, I won't play with people. Even if I like them, I don't play other games with them. To play a co-op game with me, we have to be on the same wavelength. Jonathan says planning on playing Dark Quarter when it comes out. Yeah, I think we will play it on the channel. Is it going to come out? Dark Quarter is the New Orleans style detective game that got teased a couple times. Uses an app, if I remember correctly, but looks beautiful. I think we will try to play that maybe. I wouldn't mind playing more Chronicles of Crime on the channel as well, to remind myself of the mechanical pieces of that. Chronicles of Crime has an app to help you build cases as well, and it does show the value of an app for interactions like ask this person about this person. It does make it easier not to forget certain things. There's lots of things that with a back-end app you can do that's hard to do with a pure paper thing. So play by mail in some sense has sort of the best of all worlds. You're 99% of what you're doing is paper sitting in front of you. And then occasionally a reply comes from the back end software that can control things. Marco says, I played the 4 hidden games with my group. You have the first 4 hidden games. Well, Hidden Games is a series of cold case games that's very well written. Lately, the Cryptic Killers series has been the one I've been recommending, but the Hidden Games is good as well. There are 2 new cases out. Is that right? There's a brand new Hidden Cases game that I think we played. No, we played Cold Case Unit, brand new case. Are there new hidden games? What's the official title? Hidden Games. It's Hidden something. It's a cold case game. There's 3 or 4 of them. There is a Green Poison one that never seemed to make it to the US. But Marco seems to suggest that there are more new cases, brand new cases. I'll have to check that. If you want to help us decide what games we play on the channel, the way to do that is to go to the Board Game Geek Guild for this channel, Co-op for 2 Guild. There's a link to that on this YouTube page. And there's a thread called GameQ where I list all the games as I acquire them. Thanks again to the Patreon supporters. You might want to consider becoming a Patreon supporter. And then, so the first post in the thread is all the games as I acquire them. And then at the end, people say, hey, what about playing this weekend, and so on. So that's the place to, if you've got a game you think we should play, suggest it there. Is anyone else here going to Gen Con? Maybe it's almost 2 hours. We should just wrap this up here. Marco says there are more hidden games. Okay, let's wrap it up. Boy, this cup looks a little dirty here. It's not, it's coffee. All right, don't worry about it. Thank you for joining me. I'd love to have your participation. Don't be shy. Jump in, try to write a case or help out in whatever way you can, or just jump in and give us some encouragement on the project. I'll see you next time.